Hey guys, I'm Tyler with Independence Overland, and I wanted to go over this truck now that I've put almost 7,000 miles on it. I've got about 6,800, a little over 6,800, and I bought this thing the week of July 4th. I've got plenty of videos that are going to be coming out on the adventures that I've taken this truck out on, but those just take a long time to edit. On those trips, I've obviously been just racking up the miles, using the off-road features, using the on-road features. I feel like with the miles that I've put on this, I have a pretty good idea of some of the things that I love about this truck, a few of the things that I don't love about this truck. Some of these complaints are small complaints. Some of them are quality control types of things. I knew I was going to be getting into that because I bought a first-year vehicle. I voluntarily was a guinea pig, so I'm really not that worked up about it. If you want to see some of the modifications I've done on this, go and check out my other videos on that because there are plenty of them. I'm not going to get into the mods and stuff. This isn't a review for anything other than the truck right now. So let's get into that. Now, one of the things that I have to mention right away, because I went ahead and bought the Trailhunter, and a lot of people are like, why'd you buy that? You're just going to be replacing things on it. I wanted it. It was as simple as that. I've been building this channel literally to build a truck. I needed another source of income to where I could do something like this. And, you know, it's obviously a little bit of a creative outlet. But I've been working hard on being able to buy specifically a Tacoma because I am a Toyota guy. I did look at other options, but when they announced this, an overland specific trim that already had a snorkel, already had suspension, already had an air compressor, I was sold on that. It's basically the Rubicon of the Toyota world. So for me, it made sense because I make money on these videos to some extent, and I wanted to review the overland version of the truck on an overland YouTube channel. All of that being said, there are some things that I'm disappointed about with the Trailhunter. And one of the main things is that when Toyota announced these two models, this and the new TRD Pro, the TRD Pro is the Go Fast Desert Runner. This is for going the distance and carrying loads over rocks. This truck does not have the suspension to carry loads over rocks. I would say that this is a very standard overland type of build. For the weight, this truck's springs cannot keep up with this. Payload aside, the suspension on this thing, while it rides beautifully, it does not put up with heavy weight. So Toyota did advertise this truck to be the load carrying truck. So honestly, what I expected, what I wanted, was a heavier spring in the back of this. And as far as I know, they are not going to be releasing a heavier spring for the front or the back. So from my perspective, when I originally justified buying this truck, it was because it had the Old Man Emu suspension. And my thinking was, okay, Old Man Emu, they know what they're doing. They build good stuff, which apparently this is built by Bilstein for Old Man Emu, which I don't love. So far, it's a good suspension. I just wish that they were actually building it. But with the springs, I've not heard anything about being able to switch out that spring. I don't want to do a preload collar. I want a proper spring on the front of this thing. So on the front, it's a coil over. So you need a specific spring for that shock. Maybe somebody will come out with one, or maybe somebody will discover that another company's spring will work with this. But right now, there's nothing like that. So if I put a front bumper and a winch on the front, which I will be doing, then I'm probably gonna have to switch out my front suspension. So that's kind of a disappointment. And on the rear end, this truck with this load on the back was squatting big time. I actually put airbags in the back that I had laying around for the FJ that I never put in. And so this thing, the only reason it's sitting like it is right now is because it has the air springs in it, which are a little too short. Otherwise, this would be up a little bit higher. And that's another one of my complaints is now that I have used this thing, I do wish it was a little bit higher because it fits 35s and I don't have very much rubbing. There's a few small instances where it's rubbed and it's been very sudden and then it doesn't do it again for the rest of the trip. And it's just that perfect articulation wherever it's just rubbing a tiny bit. But I do wish that this truck was lifted a little bit more because compared to the FJ, that thing's like 3 inches higher than this is. That being said, I've gotten through plenty of obstacles with this so far. So this truck has done beautifully off-road even without the extra lift, but it's something to note. Okay, so another thing I want to go over while we're facing this side of the truck is the paint. And I've heard this before, that Toyota's new paint is very thin, and that's because they can basically the way they can paint a vehicle now, they can do it in a thinner layer to achieve a similar result. The problem is that the paint is very thin and it scratches very easily. And I had PPF done to the front of this truck as soon as I saw how easily it scratched because I didn't hit anything where I could even hear it going down the side of the truck, and my truck was scratched. And so it was one of those things where I just felt like because this truck was so new, I needed to do the whole PPF thing, and I've done a video on the PPF stuff, but my truck is covered in PPF, so it basically heals in the sun. But something to note for you guys that are gonna be buying one of these things, whether it's this model or any of the other ones, This paint is really thin and it scratches incredibly easily. Not only does the paint scratch easily, but so do the plastics. I feel bad for anybody that has a TRD Pro. We all called it with those shiny black fenders that they're gonna scratch easily. Even these fenders are very scratched up. They seem like they scratch a lot easier than my FJ fenders do. So that's just something to know. And they do stick out quite a bit. This is a wide truck, so I anticipated some of that to some extent, but it is what it is, and it's something that you guys should know about. So another thing to mention is that the fuel economy on these trucks is pretty terrible. You know, Toyota's saying that it's like 23, 24. Maybe on some of the lowest grade hybrid models, you can get stuff like that, or maybe even the non-hybrids. But the fuel economy is pretty bad. So as soon as I put 35s on here and I was going through Kansas, which both of my vehicles seem to do terrible whenever I'm going through the flatlands. My FJ will do about 14 here in Colorado. This thing will do about 15 or 16 if I keep it under 65. But it's got so much power and it is so easy to drive at highway speeds that I just find myself being like, you know what, I'm gonna go the speed limit for a change because my FJ has a harder time doing that. So I find myself getting terrible fuel economy. So while I say 15, 16 with 35, 1250s on here, and then I have the rooftop tent, which is adding wind resistance, of course. Your results are gonna vary depending on where you live, but the fuel economy just isn't that great. I'm used to that with the FJ, but I was hoping for more. Something I hope to see with maybe some of the tunes that'll come out from Overland Taylor Tune or something like that. I'm curious if they're going to be able to get into the hybrid system and make that hybrid system tunable. Because if you could actually go into eco mode and use eco mode for what I would assume it should be for, that would be awesome. When you put your truck into eco mode and you're driving down the highway or driving through town, you barely see it doing anything at all. And it would be cool if in eco mode specifically, it would actually utilize the battery more to where you actually are getting that better fuel economy. I know this truck's hybrid system is designed for power rather than efficiency, and it is very, very good at that. This thing has so much power. Even towing a trailer with 35-inch tires on it, I can pass people going up like Vail Pass, which is absolutely impossible with my FJ Cruiser. That thing screams up those passes. This thing does it effortlessly. It does not feel like it needs a re-gear at all with a 35-inch tire, so that's pretty nice. This is basically a bolt-on application for a 35 if you have a plus 35 offset, and yes, this is a 17-inch wheel. That's the other thing I need to talk about. So with these trucks, you can bolt a 35 right to it. As you can see, I have a 17-inch method wheel on mine. Already scarred them up a little bit, which I'm proud to say that I do wheel this thing quite frequently. But one thing that I noticed about this truck is while you can fit a 35 on there, these trucks come with multiple brake packages. The lowest grade Tacomas come with one brake package, and then the TRD off-roads, I believe it is, non-hybrid, come with a different brake package, and then all of the hybrid models come with another brake package. And it's a pretty big brake, and you can fit a 17 over it. But what I was expecting from that brake package was a very significant braking application. With the bigger brake package the hybrids get, I really expected them to do okay with these 35s, and that was not the case. As soon as I put the 35s on, we were in Oklahoma, Arkansas, one of those places, and we noticed right away, Natalie even mentioned it, she's like, whoa, this thing does not slow down as good as I thought. And so, that being said, you do have a longer stop time, which I knew that was going to be part of the deal with a bigger tire. I fully expected that, but they felt much weaker than I expected. So part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because when you're using crawl control and you're going down steep descents here in a place like Colorado, if you're not engine braking with this truck and you're using crawl control to go down a steep descent, you're actually using your brakes, even though it's basically like fluctuating the brakes at a super speed. You are using your brakes though. So being that this thing struggles a little bit on the highway to slow down this size of a tire, I'm curious how hot the brakes will get whenever you're doing descents in places like Colorado, because crawl control is actuating your brakes at a very quick rate. And so it's probably gonna allow it to cool down faster than if you're just keeping your foot on the brake, but still, crawl control does utilize the braking system. So I'm curious if Toyota has thought about that, but either way, it already has me thinking about upgrading the pads at least, and I may even do a power brake upgrade on this thing in the future. So I've had a few warranty issues, and one of them I talked about in a previous video. That's my air compressor, and you can go and check that video out if you're curious. But anyway, my air compressor does not work. I'm waiting on one, and it is covered under warranty. This tailgate overall to me is a huge con. I have no problem lifting and lowering a tailgate that's this size, that's this small, that's this lightweight. Why do I need an electric tailgate? There's been like 2 times that I've used it to where it's been nice to have the electric feature. Aside from that, it kind of drives me crazy that it's such a slow moving thing. My truck's getting an Alu-Cab canopy camper soon, or a mod cab camper, I guess I should say, is the new version. And this is coming off anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So as you guys can see in some of my videos, I actually use my truck, and I've used my FJ in the past, and I have a certain expectation of what I'm gonna put something through. So when I'm doing trails, I'm expecting the truck to do its job. And recently, when we were in Utah, is that where I assume this happened. Maybe it happened on one of my other last trips, but this plastic piece is now broken off. The plastic clips have gone to the wayside, which I do have a few spares that I could use. But anyway, this got torn off, and it shifted this to where I think there's an internal bracket that I need to bend back. So anyway, with this ARB bumper, it's nice that this is metal, which I have hit a few times already. But yeah, it has taken a hit right here because this section is plastic. And honestly, that's kind of a big section to be plastic. The departure angle right here is pretty good, but still I'm hitting on this, and it did get my bed paint a little bit right there where I don't have any PPF and stuff. So I need to replace some clips and pull this off and make this fit a little bit better again, because it's definitely removed from the back of the bumper a little bit, and it's very obvious how far off it is. So I don't even know when I did that, but I did it. I think most people are gonna be nicer to their brand new truck than I have, but I'm just trying to go out and camp with it, and I'm not really thinking about it. I want it to be able to do the same stuff the FJ does, and I'm just used to wheeling a certain way, and so I'm not gonna get out for every little thing. If I hear metal scratching, I usually just assume it's the skid plate or the bumper, and I just go about my business. I didn't even think about a plastic portion was going to take a hit. So something to note, and I'm sure some of the other companies that are offering rear bumpers like Rago or C4, I think C4 has one out now, or Cali raised LED. There's some other options out there right now, and so you can go on and check some of those out. Anyway, just a small thing that I thought I would mention. I know how beneficial a snorkel or a raised air intake is. That thing on the FJ has blocked out so much dust from going into that engine. I've proved it in different videos, and it is a very functional piece. I wanted that, and I didn't want to drill straight into a brand new truck. I do know that this was a risk buying the first generation. If this wasn't for the channel, I wouldn't have bought a first generation. So because of that, it made more sense for me to get something that came with this from the factory. I think it looks great. I think it sounds great. But on the note of how it sounds, I have to say that it is pretty annoying sometimes. When you're off-road, you won't really hear the Snorkel doing its loud blow-off valve noise. But when you're on the highway, or if you're just trying to cruise around town or something like that, it can be pretty obnoxious. It's one of those things that when you roll the windows up, you can't hear it almost at all because of the acoustic glass on here. And the noise canceling that's on the inside of these trucks is amazing. But whenever you roll the windows down, especially for the passenger, this can be very obnoxious. And so it's just one of those things where there's a cool factor to it, but also in day-to-day use, it can be very, very annoying, especially if you're a person that likes to ride with the windows down. This could get pretty obnoxious. So from one perspective, it sounds really good. It sounds really cool, at least in my opinion. And then other times it's just like, man, I wish I could just turn that thing off right now so I could just cruise around and not have it blasting off in my ears. But just something to note. So the other thing on the front end of this truck is the light bar from Rigid. The fog lights are awesome, having a white and amber switchable fog light. Even though the switch is kind of hard to find whenever you're driving, I do wish it was a little more visible. But I always have to like look down whenever I'm driving to see where that switch is. But the thing is with the light bar is this is more like having ditch lights. It's useful in some aspects as far as you can see into the ditches around you. So it kind of helps you with like wildlife and stuff like that. It only works with the high beams on, which I'm fine with. But if you're looking for more reach out of a light bar, this is not the light bar. I'm assuming it is rated for the 20,000 lumens that they claim it is, but I was just expecting at least some of it to be more of a spotlight, and it's not the case. I think that some of the aftermarket upgrades are gonna come out, and you can get like this type of a grill for your truck. I would personally be looking at something like a Baja Designs, because me personally living in Colorado, I wanna see elk in the distance before I get to them. Still, it's useful because you're seeing stuff in the ditches and stuff like that, but I just wish it had a little bit more reach. Okay, and so let's talk about a few more of the cons on this truck.
The wheels are too big and they get damaged too easily, especially since a 17-inch wheel will fit over the brake rotor. The 18-inch wheel was a weird choice on Toyota's part. The inverter is fantastic to have for charging batteries and running 110 appliances, but it does produce a high-pitched noise that you can hear specifically from the passenger seat. You can't use the fog lights and the light bar at the same time. And why? Because off-roading, you want all the light that you can get. I'm not alone in this one. The factory roof rack vibrates the entire truck over 70 miles an hour, so save your money, look at other options. The truck has a lot of alarms, but luckily you can turn those off with the Carista device, so I will link that below. The heads-up display that's projected onto the windshield seems to be a little out of focus to my eyes. I'm sure there's a way to fix it, I just haven't figured it out yet. On the hybrids, the battery is under the back seat. This means we're going to have to run some pretty heavy battery cable to the winch. The ability to customize 3 sets of gauge pages is awesome, but the truck will randomly forget these custom settings at times, and I have to go through and reset everything up. And last is what happened to all the 3D printed stuff. In the early days of these trucks, Toyota was talking about an online community where files could be shared for 3D printed accessories, and they were supposed to supply some of those print files themselves. I have not seen that yet.
Okay, so now let's get into the pros of this truck, because I've had a lot of people ask me how I'm liking it so far, how everything's going. So obviously this is a very good looking truck. I'm a big fan of the aggressive lines and how this thing looks. Right now on camera, I know that it looks really cool. And I just think it looks great. I'm glad I got this hood instead of the hood scoop version, because I have heard that that's pretty shaky. So far, I have really enjoyed driving this truck. It feels like such a luxury truck to go off-roading in. It really does. It bums me out a little bit every time I go out and off-road, because there's dust just covering the dash. Everything's covered in dirt. The exterior is super dirty, and it is just such a pretty truck whenever it's all shined up. I'm just not good at keeping things all shined up. A few of the features like the off-road cameras, I've gotten comments on, doesn't that take the fun away from off-roading? No, it doesn't, because honestly, I forget that it's there. I think if you're the type of person that's gonna rely on that, yes, it's gonna take away from the off-roading. I only use it when I need it. I have a habit of looking out at my tires, but this thing does have a longer snout than what I'm used to with my FJ Cruiser. So that front camera has come in very handy a number of times to where we can't see over the top of a trail. It's beautiful. And then these cameras, in a video that I will be releasing here before too long, I was on a pretty narrow shelf road with the trailer behind me, and it was honestly pretty sketchy how wide this truck was. It was fine, like I had room on each side of me, but because of the trailer, I was having to pivot in certain ways around rocks. And these cameras came in so handy for that, because I knew I wasn't hitting on that side, and I knew I wasn't going off a cliff on this side. And it would have been a lot harder, especially monitoring that side. So anyway, no, it doesn't make it less fun off-road. It's absolutely beautiful. I've loved those types of features. So back to the powertrain, this thing is fantastic. Having this amount of power in this truck is so nice, because I can pass people. If a semi starts doing something weird next to me, I can accelerate and get out of the way rather than just relying on the brakes like I used to with the FJ. It is a significant power difference. It is so nice to have off-road. And with the power, I've had people questioning, which I brought up in a previous video actually, the power off-road, I think with these trucks, because Toyotas have never had power like this before, is the torque low down on these things, which is fully available at 1700 RPMs. That is very low. So you're gonna have to be more careful with a truck like this. You can't be just hopping on rocks and stuff whenever you're off-roading, because I think you're gonna be more likely to break stuff. As using the crawl control, I think is now almost a mandatory thing. I've always been somebody who's gone up things rather slowly. I've never been somebody that hops my truck really. So for those guys that get on rocks and just start bumping that gas, you're gonna run into problems, I think, on these, because they have so much torque, especially if you put a front locker or something in this. That is a lot of power, really low down. And so honestly, I think the crawl control is now going to be a feature that is not only going to be helpful, because a lot of people don't believe in crawl control really, but I think in a lot of situations it's actually going to be necessary, so you can let the computer stop itself from breaking your front diff or your rear diff. And I know with that comment somebody's going to bring up TFL. That has since been fixed. That whole logic in the computer system, the software, that's been fixed, so that should not be a problem anymore. So crawl control should be doing its thing, and should save you in those situations. So it's nice on the highway to have that much power, but off-road you need to think about it a little bit more. This truck from the factory does have threads on the roof for a roof rack. It has threads in the frame for rock rails. It is set up for rear bumpers and stuff. These trucks are now made to be modified, and I think that speaks a lot to what Toyota is trying to manufacture for some of us that are going to use these trucks in this way. So the sway bar disconnect system on this truck, and I know Jeeps and stuff have had it forever, it is so nice. One of the nicest things that I've noticed about the sway bar, flex aside, I haven't done any measuring or anything. There's other channels that are doing that kind of stuff. For me, it's the head toss. when we're going down trails now, I can tell if the sway bar has not been disconnected. If Natalie is driving, because she does a lot of the driving since I'm always filming, I can tell right away, oh, the sway bar is still on. It is a very noticeable difference, and it makes for a much more comfortable off-road experience. So anyway, I just thought that I would mention that the sway bar disconnect is just badass either way, but it does make for a much more comfortable ride off-road. Some of the creature comforts on this thing are so nice to have. Heated steering wheel, heated seats, ventilated seats. That stuff, I put aftermarket heated seats in the FJ. They work pretty good. They almost get too hot, honestly, the Shieldman seats that I put in there. These are about perfect. You have 3 levels of heat. You have 3 levels of ventilation. And man, going through Utah this year, it was so hot outside during some of those days. And being able to have a ventilated seat was just so nice. The heated steering wheel on some of the colder mornings that I've camped this year, when I've woken up and it's been freezing outside, it is so nice. It's just like a small feature that is just a creature comfort. I know plenty of vehicles have had that for a long time, but on something like this, a mid-sized vehicle, it is big, but it is a very nice thing to have. Another nice thing that I have to say from the perspective of using this as an adventure vehicle are some of the on-road characteristics of like the lane assist. Those types of things take so much driving fatigue off of you when you're driving 12 hours in a day. And I know that all the technology freaks people out. They've been putting it in vehicles for quite some time now. In cruise control, if somebody swerves in front of you, the truck will automatically distance itself. If somebody in front of you locks their brakes up, it'll automatically brake. And that may freak some people out, and it did me too at first, but I've had that happen a few times. And it is one of those things where once it happens once, you really appreciate it, because otherwise you would have rear-ended somebody that pulled in front of you. So those features, as well as the lane assist, where it keeps you in the lane, and even to some extent the truck actually drives itself around like big bends on the highway and stuff, it does tell you have to hold on to it. You can't just let go of the steering wheel. But those little things on a long distance trip, they really do help out a lot. When you get to a place, you will notice that you're less tired. And from the perspective of building a truck like this to travel distances, I think that that's a pretty nice thing to have. You can turn that stuff off, but I find myself turning it on. I really do enjoy it. It is really fantastic to have. Let's talk about a few more of the pros that I found on this truck.
The active noise cancellation in acoustic glass is fantastic, and I can appreciate it even more now that I have 35-inch mud tires on this thing. It is so much more of a quiet ride than my FJ Cruiser is. The bed scene lights are way brighter and more useful than I thought they would be. I'm used to having plenty of light around camp, but I found that these lights are incredibly nice for various tasks. They are a very nice upgrade for any of the off-road enthusiasts out there. The 14-inch screen is obnoxious when you see it in photos, but it is fantastic once you get behind the wheel. A lot of off-roaders will put an iPad on their dash. That is no longer necessary. The Trailhunter trim skid plates are actually pretty good. Toyotas in the past came with some pretty flimsy stuff, but at least on this trim, that's not the case. And the last thing, at least for this video, is how well this truck tows. It's not surprising with how much torque that it has, but it really does do a great job. Aside from the one thing we talked about earlier, which is needing heavier springs. So if you're planning to tow with your Trailhunter, get some new springs or airbags.
Okay guys, so that is my 7,000 mile review. All in all, I'm very happy with this thing. It's very comfortable. Obviously, I've made all sorts of modifications to this thing. I will not be putting as many miles on it in the near future because this thing is going away it's gonna go away for about a month and a half. It's gonna get a ton of work done. This is gonna be one of the coolest 4th gen Tacomas that you're gonna see for a while, I promise. I've been drawing up plans for this thing for so long. So I am getting some help on what's coming with this truck. I'm gonna take it down to Tactical Application Vehicles in New Mexico. I've become buddies with those guys over time, and they're gonna do some awesome work for me with an Alucab canopy camper. I'm so excited about it. And then I've got one big surprise on this truck, and I'm really, really stoked about it. And it can't come soon enough. So for anybody watching this and they're like, man, we've barely seen any off-roading out of you with this truck, I promise I've done so much off-roading. Those videos take so much time to edit, like I'm talking 30 to 40 hours sometimes. And so those videos are coming. I just need to sit down now that I have weekends where I'm not going camping and going off-roading. I can sit down at my computer, get that stuff out, and you're gonna see this truck and all the gadgets and all the cool stuff that I have on it. You're gonna see a lot more of it. I'm very excited about getting these videos out. So anyway, that's what I have for now. That's my 7,000 mile review. At least from my experience, the hybrid system is fantastic. Having extra power in a Toyota is a new experience. I do not regret buying this thing at all. It's been a fun truck. All right, guys, so if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I will link a bunch of other videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time.
Click one of the videos in the corner to check out more of our adventure, off-road, and overland related content.